Hi, and welcome to the last day of sessions. We have 6 sessions, and we'll start off with Paula, who will talk about simplifying infrastructure. Welcome.
Okay. So we are going to be a small crowd, so I'm trying actually to do that very interactive. Right, so today you have seen, actually, I'm Paola Arosio, I'm product manager. Actually, it's like a funny thing. I've been in Cisco forever, since 2000, since the acquisition of Pirelli. Pirelli at the time actually had a nice commercial that was saying, power is nothing without controller, right? And we are speaking about controller, so I was like, nice, it was like a nice remind. So I'm going a bit back to basic, right? You have seen a lot of functionality that we are going actually to add with artificial intelligence, machine learning, how we move to autonomous network, but how I can get visibility and value from my infrastructure on day 0. As soon as I install a router, I install a new technology, how I can actually get that in a simple way. So we actually are going through different points, right? Here is like how I can reduce at the minimum the adoption of a controller, or in this case, right, add instant value to the having a detailed visibility of my network. And how I can actually do is like sometime, the time actually to adoption is actually make longer by the fact that you need to recertify and so on. So I want actually something that is pre-certified, available, and ready to be used, but is also extendable. And it is actually available to extend to other functionality. So I want actually to have ready visibility of my node, of my topology, and then prepare the node actually to the end-to-end provisioning that is done actually to the controller function. So all this functionality, so this session is more of a product update, are going actually to be available in the Crosswork network controller as part of the essential tier license. So the basic that you are going to actually have is the full visibility of your network. So how we actually address the simple adoption? Let me say that the controller initially was actually focusing on a very large network, but we have seen that we actually have not only large service providers, but there are also utilities, public sector that are actually adopting the controller because they actually have the same requirement of a large service provider, but on a smaller network. So how we can actually simplify the overall adoption of the code. So we actually added a version that is available. Right now it's already available with 7.0 and is going to be available for the full controller function in 7.1 that is on single VM. So it means that you receive an OVA, you just actually deploy. You can deploy that on your internal infrastructure or an external public data center. Of course, it's not multi-tenant, it's like single tenant, but you will be able actually to ramp it up immediately. Of course, there is also the cluster version. The cluster version can go up to 15,000 devices. Right now we have a target with 7.1 will go to 25,000 devices and even more. It's easy to actually integrate with an ecosystem because all the functions that you will see here that I'm presenting are actually available through API for integration with your inventory system, fault system, and so on. And we actually have also added as part of the essential package the zero-touch onboarding. So you can actually easily upload or prepare, right, onboard your node. Here are, the set of functions that we actually have available as part of the Crosswork network controller essential tier. So you will see they are all the basic functions that you actually have for the visibility of the device and the topology, what we call element management function. I'm going back a bit of basic because the visibility is like a clear information that you need. So for example, if I actually have a service and I see that the service is degrading, I want to drill down to the specific entity that is causing the degradation. That can be an interface, but then I wanted to understand which is the containment tree. I wanted to understand that interface is on that specific port, on that module, and so on. So we actually have a set of functionality. Underlay configuration, or let's say template configuration, is coming with CNC 7.1. How I use the underlay configuration? The zero-touch provisioning allows you to onboard quickly your device and add the initial configuration. But there are some configuration that you are doing to prepare the device to your service provisioning that are, for example, some protocol configuration and so on. So we add the underlay configuration in order actually to simplify all this process, so you can actually push template quick and easy to multiple devices. We actually have fault management. So in the context of the device, we are collecting all the events, syslog, trap, and so on that are related to the device, both Cisco and multi-vendor, and we are handling the overall life cycle of the fault. What we are doing is, like in this specific, the initial phase, we actually had the duplication of event and other type of the duplication means of the fault, but we are not actually adding root cause analysis. And the reason is that root cause like it was like conceived in the past was more based on rule. And rules are actually very difficult to maintain, are actually subject to change if you change the technology. What you have seen in yesterday's session, I believe from Javier, you have seen that we are actually looking at leveraging on Foresight for a use case for event correlation, because it's like an area where machine learning can actually help in doing work that with normal rule was like not actually going to be achieved. Then we actually have device and image configuration. Also here, you actually have seen Crosswork Workflow Manager that actually enable you to actually perform a fleet upgrade that is going to be integrated in CNC 7.1. But there are actually some customers that want actually just to execute a basic operation, and those basic operations are the same that are going to be leveraged by the Crosswork Workflow Manager. So download the image and do basic check like the device is up, I actually have my enough space on my device and perform the operation. The other thing that we actually added in 7.1 is configuration backup and restore. There are actually customers that want actually to backup their configuration and actually archive them, right? And so compare and so on. And then we have, device performance management. So on that aspect, I want actually to be very clear. We are only collecting those statistics that are actually required to understand the status of the resources. So for example, for interface, we are collecting transmit, receive, and so on. For the device, CPU, memory, eventually temperature, but we are not actually going to collect whatever statistic that the device has, and also those statistics that are not pertinent to the health of the component. If you want actually to collect, to actually have a collection and analysis or a KPI view of your network, you have seen also this morning the presentation of provider connectivity assurance. Where it's certified, this is certified with all the XR devices, the XC devices, and we extended also to the Nexus OS. So if you want to actually have a visibility also in your data center, I'm not speaking about fabric management control in the data center, for which there is like a different tool called Nexus Dashboard. But if you want just to actually have visibility of the topology and connectivity between the device that you have in the data center, your core, and and your core, one network connecting, for example, data center, you can actually leverage a single tool. So, of course, when we actually introduce some function, we actually try to leverage those functions across all the technology and innovation that actually Cisco introduced. So, you actually have here some of those innovation, like, I still report the metro architecture, but it's agile service networking, routed optical networking, where we actually have the optics replacing the transponder and actually being placed in the router. So also with the essential functionality of the controller, you can actually cover some aspect of those architecture. For example, in the routed optical networking, if you have a dark fiber actually connecting the DCO, you can anyway do the provisioning using the config underlay, or the template configuration, the wavelength on the DCO, and you will see, the connectivity between the two DCO. Of course, you don't see the underlay optical layer because the controller is an IP controller, but you will be able actually to have this level of visibility. I will go more in detail of the automated assurance, because the visibility of infrastructure is a paramount then to be able actually to monitor the service and the transport layer. Sustainability, we can actually collect some specific parameters that can be used then to actually have a dashboard view focusing on the sustainability of your infrastructure. 5G transport slice and automation, we actually can provide all the detail of the device that are actually part of the slice. And then in the context of the networks, the agile network service networking, what we call before metro architecture, we can see you can perform all the operation on the new devices that are going actually to support this specific architecture. So we are coming out at the same time of the availability of the device. So as soon as you have the new router, you will be able actually to see that and perform, some basic operation. It's like feature ready. So the point is like fully integrated with the controller function. Deepak today was actually presenting the Crosswork network controller. We have two different layers, let's say an element management layer and a service management layer. So in the way that we actually integrated the function is like it's seamless with the rest of the controller function that you are going actually to have. So we avoid the operator to switch chair between a different tool. We leverage, of course, the same platform, and that simplify a lot of what we call non-functional requirement. So I needed to actually have GOHA. You actually have GOHA on the controller. You actually have also on the essential. You actually have security. You have specific security requirement will be fulfilled in the same way. It's pre-integrated with the Crosswork hierarchical controller, and then actually enable context drill down. I have a short video. Let's see how long it will take, right? This view is like the view that you have in the hierarchical controller. The value of the hierarchical controller is like provide you a combined view between your IP layer and the optical layer. I believe it's moving. I don't know if it's okay. So you will actually have, this view. You can actually see, which is like your optical layer. So this is the underneath optical infrastructure. Then you actually see the overlay, so the IP, and then you can see them combined, right? So at a certain point, we actually are seeing a specific link. We see, the information that link is actually down. We can actually see that, and we can then actually have the same exact view as part of CNC. in this video, you don't see the possibility actually to cross-launch, but if you go to the boot that we have, you don't need again to move through two different applications, but you will be able actually to cross-launch the cross-network controller, contextualize with the specific information that you are seeing. So here you see, that the link is used by a specific IGP path. So if the link go down, of course, that path is going actually to be affected. So you see that this information is coming from a version of CNC. Then we can actually go down and see, the detail of what is happening. I thought that it was a bit shorter, but so you see that this link at this point is going down, and the information are going actually to be provided through the API that we actually have discussed before, right? So I can see, the link is down, is like who is actually using, which is like the status, which are the specific interface, right, that are actually at the endpoint of the link. Those are all information that are exposed by the cross-network controller to a router. Of course, here you don't see the cross launch because we completed later on, but you see the same link that is actually reported as down. And if I want to see which is the specific event that caused the link down, I can actually select the endpoint and actually see all the related alarm. So here I see that those are the different links. All of three are down, and these are the different layers, the Ethernet layer, the ISIS, and so on. Then I can select my node endpoint, and finally I can see the alarm that caused the link down, right? And all these functionality are available and embedded in the workflow that you have of the cross-network controller. So the other part is like it in complement the intent-based and policy monitoring with infrastructure visibility. Because this is like a view that usually I cover with the service assurance. The approach that we have with service assurance is intent-based. So we are not actually monitoring everything that is under the infrastructure, but we start from the service intent, and we monitor only the components that are actually affecting the service. And we understand that from the configuration that the CNC actually have, because we are leveraging the network service orchestrator, and we understand also the specific configuration, which are the entity that has been actually touched by that services. We monitor all these entities independently, and then actually everything is actually brought together by a service assurance for intent networking architecture that is like a recent RSC that we are implemented. So why infrastructure health is important, right? Because as I was saying at the beginning, if I actually have a problem on my services, I want actually to understand, I want actually to start from my intent, I want to see the services degrading, and then actually trying actually to understand which are the components of the infrastructure that are degrading, instead of proceeding the other way around. Let's think about, right, that is like one of the reasons why we are not implementing incident management or noise reduction of the event, but we were waiting, for different methodology that right now we actually have with the Foresight infrastructure. Is like, if I actually have a fault and trying actually to understand which are all the services are impacted, it's going to take a long time. Instead, the approach is like, I'm telling you that which is the service is impacted, I tell you if there is a problem in one of the logical component or physical component of the service, like for example the interface, and then through that view, through the inventory view, I can actually clearly identify the relationship between inventory, pluggable port, and line card, because I may actually have a problem on my specific module that cause, that degradation. And that actually help the operator in going, through the path of troubleshooting. Of course, we actually have also the alarm and event, so we collect all the trap, syslog, and we expose that northbound or visualize in a single format. So you don't need actually to do interpretation. There is a level of normalization and the duplication that is done by the this function. And then we are actually collecting key metric and collecting those metrics that are important to understand the status of the resources. And we are able actually also to define threshold crossing alert and expose, the information. One of the enhancements that we added in CNC 7.1 is like the ability also to add customization in terms of alarm and KPI. And that is like especially useful for third-party devices, because third-party devices, we can actually extend to third-party. I believe I have a slide. I actually have first a video that show, some of those actually function, right? So like, for example, in the inventory, we can actually have all the details. So let's think that I want to understand where I have all my pluggable, right? Where they are and so on in my network. I can actually search and find. The other aspect is like, as I said at the beginning, the aspect of the controller is to be completely multi-vendor. So in the case of multi-vendor, we are relying on the standard MIB, but the goal is like to be able actually to provide a logical visualization of the containment tree to help understand, the point about the link between the different points. So instead of having a chassis view, you actually have this logical view that you can actually browse and search that will give you the dependency tree. We are actually trying to enhance, because of course if there are a lot of ports is becoming quite large, but the goal is like to quickly identify if there are actually some component of my devices that are actually failing and understand which is like the containment tree. And of course, when I select, then I can see all the detail, right? So I can actually search, for example, for product ID or other type of information. For example, here I select for our name, and I can see the information. What I was saying in the case of routed optical networking, that I can see also, all the statistic and the visibility of the specific pluggable is actually available here. So we are pre-certified with XR, XE, and XR, XE, and Nexus OS starting from CNC 7.1. But we can also use those functions for third party. Now, if the third party actually satisfy, some standard, you don't need to do any work. If it is based on SNMP MIB, inventory can actually be there. Alarm, so we are actually leveraging if MIB, SNMP, open config, GNMI, and matrix with open config GNMI. Of course, we have seen in different engagements that while the standard is actually supported, there are actually some the way that the containment tree is going actually to be done by the different vendor is sometimes different. So we actually add, starting from CNC 7.0, the option for customize and extend, so you can actually map a third-party vendor to the model, so you actually have all the functionality that are available, including a correct containment tree. As I said, in 7.1, that is going actually to be FCS in 10 days. We are having the possibility to enable new alarm support. So in the past, if you want actually, I mean, of course, the alarm is going to be recognized, it's like collected, right? But the switch from an event to an alarm was actually sometimes require development from Cisco. So you need actually to wait from us, but with this new feature, you can actually promote an alarm, a event to an alarm. And also actually add a metric via SNMP, GNMI, CLI that are actually specific to the device. Of course, when we are adding metric, what we suggest, again, the controller is not a performance management application. Just collect those metrics that are actually required to understand the health status of the topology information that you are reporting. We have in the roadmap support of OpenConfig GNMI, still in the roadmap. The reason is that not all the devices are actually supporting OpenConfig for inventory. So we are collecting feedback from the customer on when to move to this direction. And one other part, the alarm and metric, we still actually have the backend, not the UI, but we are going actually to add the UI in the upcoming version. So because it's backend, you may actually still need some help from either CX or professional services and so on. This is like the exact same view that I have before, but this video was run in a complete multi-vendor network. So here you see, we actually have Juniper, I believe, Huawei, Nokia, Ericsson, and you can see that the same information that we can actually provide out of the box for Cisco was actually enabled for the third party. But I can tell you that, it was not. We cannot rely only on the standard MIB because of the specific implementation of the vendor. So you see, we can actually see all the information and so on. It's just showing, that it's like the third-party support is not just a slideware, but it's like a reality. I'm not going over the overall thing. I'm actually going towards the end. So, infrastructure visibility and control make easy. So, you can simply attach to your switch and router. As soon as you actually order a router, you can order CNC Essential. We give you immediate visibility also of the infrastructure. And then you can actually add the rest of the function at your own pace. Pre-certified, Cisco OS are fully certified, means that we are running for a full certification internally, so you don't need actually to test. Most of the test is actually done by us. Of course, I can understand that there is like a level of testing that you are doing in your setup. In some cases, we are also available in giving you a pre-FCS code of our application. So it's like using an EFT is always a value add because you can actually have a preview. It's not yet fully quality, but you can actually identify, for example, issues that you have actually seen, maybe can only be seen in your network, inform us, and we can fix before actually releasing the actual software. Too late for CNC 7.1, but think about for the next version. And then it's future ready because, again, it's fully integrated with the rest of the controller function. So it's just you actually had the Advantage package, and you don't need actually to do anything else, right? All the functions that you see are actually completely integrated and complement all the service lifecycle that is actually offered as part of the controller. I believe, as an Italian, I'm always pretty quick. but we are at the end. So I'm actually open for question if you have, or if we still have time, I don't know.
Yes, we have time. Let's check Slido first.
I will give some time for the Slido.
So let's check if there are questions in the room.
Maybe if you don't have question, I will ask question. So let me ask a question. Are you planning actually to adopt a cross-network controller, or you already have a cross-network controller? Not yet. Planning to? Interested? Maybe? Maybe? Well, I mean, a baby step would be the cross-network controller essential, right? So at least if you actually have Cisco hardware, it's like, the initial step. Then, it's your network big, or it's like less than 1,000 devices? Okay. But average you see in Europe more small or large? I mean, I consider small less than 1,000 devices, right? Okay, so yeah, I can understand. And, again, we actually have, so I was reporting 15,000, but because that was like done with 7.0, but we are already at 25,000. So it's like a pretty good number. Of course, in that case, you need the cluster version. But for small customers, especially utilities and so on, again, with 1,000 in 7.0, we have only the essential, but now in 7.1, we have also the full controller function, right? That is simplify a lot your, deployment and initial, turn up, because sometimes we notice like that, the time spent for installation, bringing up and so on, it's like longer, and is getting, customer a bit anxious, and then they cannot enjoy, right, the rest of the functionality that we have. So we have focused specifically on this aspect to simplify to reduce at the bare minimum the overall turn up and be ready. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Paula. And we have about 5 minutes until the next session.